Yes, Renu, you can go.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this fourth and final module of the Ntg Conference 2021. A famous Latin motto says, dulcis in fundo, which means the sweet comes at the end. Let's hope that this is really the case and that this session can represent a worthy conclusion of this interesting edition of the Ntg Conference. My name is Rino Vitelli and I am the project manager and coordinator of the Ntg project. Ntg means Next Tourism Generation Alliance. Today I have the task of moderating the works of Module 4 entitled Envisioning a Skills Partnership in Tourism Sector. And it's really a pleasure and an honor for me to host some important representatives from the world of public institutions, universities, trade unions, and tourism associations. I will introduce them to you shortly. I start by telling you that this session will last about an hour and a quarter with an initial keynote speech followed by a roundtable discussion that will focus on two issues that we believe are highly topical. It's a session that, taking its cue from the launch of the Pact for Skills by the European Commission, aims to analyze the problems, but also the opportunities arising from its implementation in the tourism sector. A sector which, due to its peculiarities, makes this challenge particularly ambitious, but at the same time, very compelling. Before focusing on the Pact for Skills, let me make a very brief introduction on the Ntg project. Also because this allows us to better understand the synergies that can be activated between the two initiatives. Just give me a few seconds to share my screen. Okay. As you can see from this slide, the project is co-funded by the European Union within the framework of the Erasmus Plus program. At this project, there is the participation of 14 organizations representing 8 European countries: Italy, United Kingdom, Ireland, Spain, Hungary, Germany, Netherlands, and Bulgaria. But what are the Ntg Strategy Goals? First of all, to build a mechanism in each country together with the tourism stakeholders for continuously tracking and bridging the gap between current and future tourism skills. Secondly, improve the relationship between tourism enterprises, education systems, and governments. And finally, provide employees, employers, entrepreneurs, trainers, and students with a set of tools and training modules in digital, green, and social skills. Here in this graphic, you can see the main outputs of our project. First of all, the Ntg skills assessment methodology, aiming at identifying the skill needs at a strategical level, at the European level, at the national level, and at the regional level. After that, the Ntg Skills Matrix and the Ntg Skills Lab, which are two tools supporting organization and individuals to identify skill needs at an operational level. Then the Ntg Skills Toolkit, supporting industry and education to address skill needs at an operational level. And finally, the Quality Skills Standards Framework, supporting industry and education system to address skill needs from a quality assurance perspective. Okay, now let's focus on the Pact for Skills. What is, in a few words, the Pact for Skills? First of all, it's a central element of the European skills agenda, being one of the flagship initiatives for sustainable competitiveness, social fairness, and resilience. It promotes joint action to maximize the impact of investing in improving existing skills and training in new skills. upskilling and reskilling. It colloques employer, social partners, chamber of commerce, public authorities, employment agency, education and training providers to work together and make a clear commitment to invest in training for all working age people across the European Union. But why the European Commission considers skills to be so important? First of all, because businesses, large, medium, and small, need skilled people to innovate and grow. And after that, because skills are critical to our recovery from the pandemic crisis and for mastering the digital and green transition. And since the mismatches and shortages in skills are increasing, while a large number of people are at risk of unemployment, only by joining the forces of all relevant partners, we can actually make substantial progress in meeting Europe's skills needs. Well, if all this is very clear and agreeable on a general level, it becomes a bit more complex and difficult to implement in an industry as complex and complicated as tourism. In fact, while other key industrial ecosystems, such as the automotive, microelectronics, aerospace, and defense industries, are marked by the presence of large companies able to provide significant references for skills development policies, tourism is a sector dominated by the presence of small and micro enterprises. And so it's really hard to aggregate a significant number of industrial partners able to inspire and support initiatives aimed at strengthening the human capital employed in this ecosystem. To talk about all these, we called today Barbara Nehofer, Elfa Kere, Kerstin Howald, and Klaus Ehrlich. Let's start with Barbara, who is head of experience design, innovation, and management in tourism at the Salzburg University of Applied Sciences. Barbara, first of all, thank you for accepting the invitation to be the keynote speaker for the fourth session of the Ntg Conference 2021. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rino, for the very kind introduction. And it's really a great honor to be here today at the Next Tourism Generation Conference and be part of this fourth module. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So thank you, everyone, also from everywhere around the globe for joining this module today. It's really great pleasure for me to talk today about the tourism skills, but also the tourism workforce. And I've selected 3 words that I would like to focus on, which is really this co-creation, transition, and transformation towards 2030. In my position at the Salzburg University of Applied Sciences, I'm a professor of experience design. So this is really where I focus on providing design and more holistic humanistic perspectives also. And this is what I would like to share with you today. I'm also the expert for the digital tourism pathway transition, where we are currently in this consultation process, co-creation process at the European Commission that I've got the honor to accompany. Let's start with an overview, and I would really like in this last session to zoom out a bit. We've heard already great inputs from all my other colleagues in the previous 3 sessions, and to tap into this zooming out a bit, what it means 2020 and our movement towards 2030. And this pandemic didn't only cause us in 2020 really the opportunity for a reset, but essentially we are at the beginning of a decade of human transformation, of a digital transformation, and a green transformation. And with that, we need to refigure our values. We need to figure our ways of life and work. We need to also rethink more holistically how our lives come together and work, and the skills we need for the daily work in tourism being an essential part of that. So I would just like to reflect on these questions in general. And this is really, for me, at the core, because if we talk about a human transition, a resilient, a green, sustainable, and digital transition, I think we also need to ask some bigger question. And that is, what does it mean nowadays to be a human? What does it mean to live well? And also, what does it mean to work well? I believe we can no longer separate topics. We can no longer operate in silos, but we really need to think to create well-being, to create resilience, to create a flourishing, let's say, life. And that is also, of course, work, but we need to focus on it holistically. I would like to start with this quote here from Keynes in 2030, who said, "In a century time, our grandchildren would work 3 hours a day and probably only by choice." This has now been almost 100 years ago. This is where our transformation towards 2030 leads us. And if this comes true, it is really an invitation for us to radically rethink also not only the existing tourism ecosystem, the work that we do, the roles that we carry out, but also really about rethinking in relation to digital transformations that are coming up, technologies and humans together that might create this vision that Keynes had as a reality of 2030, when we might work less, but in a very different way. And while this is an ambitious vision, this is something that might not seem achievable and possible right now, I believe we also need to really talk about big topics and really make the commitments to get us with the actions and the targets there to achieve such a state. From a wider perspective, I believe we talk about skills a lot and about all the different ways in which we can implement. So very concrete action points, and there is value in that. But also skills development starts with the mindset and the co-creation collaboration. And this involves also multiple levels. So if we want to change the upskilling, the reskilling, and enforce that on all the different employees level in tourism, we also need to think more of a systems perspective. And really that starts also with the leadership level that gives kind of the impulses, that gives the direction, and then creates the organizational culture level and more also the employee experiences then that are relating to the skills. And we have also come to more co-creative and collaborative approaches. And for the skills pact, this is really something at the core to change the way we do things. So to really transform the how and no longer work separately in separate sectors, in separate silos, in separate stakeholder groups, but come together in our way of thinking, our vision, our sharing, and also establishing eventually solutions that really are at the intersection of what the different sectors are doing in order to form something that really is sustainable also for the tourism ecosystem in the future. Rina already mentioned also this slide here, the Pact for Skills in Tourism before. And I also for myself highlighted again the words, the transformation of the skills. But I would like to draw your attention also to this last sentence. It is really also about improving the working conditions, the quality of work, and that includes the whole, let's say, employee journey from the recruitment to the retention of workers. We need to think also about tourism being an attractive work field that offers quality of work and well-being for the employees. And that starts with the beginning of attracting employees towards retaining them long-term. We have seen in our probably personal and professional lives a lot how the last 1.5 years have really changed the way we do things. So I would like just to talk a bit about also the vision of 2030 to give us an indication of where we're going. And currently we see that tourism workplaces are really fueled with digital technology. So we see this domain integration where we have the individual at the center that uses multiple devices, multiple applications, and is interconnected with anyone, anytime, anywhere, and any tasks. And also beyond that, any live domain. So whereas we've seen in the past more of a separation of work-life, with technology, this becomes fluid, this becomes integrated much more. And the way our employees organize the work has also been pushing boundaries in terms of not only home office versus the workplace, but greater autonomy, responsibility, and different roles and activities, as well as practices of how employees are organizing their time around work, their spaces around work, and their collaborations around work. And while we are now in this 2021, let's say, recalibration phase where we don't quite see the new yet, but we definitely know that the old is not working anymore, we can also see that there is really an opportunity to radically rethink the current systems that we have in place. And with that, in tourism, we have a great opportunity as well when it comes to defining new skills that we might need now for going towards 2030. So let's start a bit with the digital transition. With the tourism transition pathway, but also with the research I've conducted in the last 10 years, we have seen that technologies are emerging and constantly changing. So that, in essence, requires skills that are constantly updated. We can no longer rely on a person knowing social media that was relevant 10 years or 5 years ago. Now it's social media, it's artificial intelligence, it's virtual reality, big data, and so forth. That means from a skills perspective, we are currently in a position that leadership, as well as the whole organization and the individual employees, need to be up to date and dynamically updating their skills and competences. In addition, what we also now see that we really need to step beyond tourism as the context, as the industry, to foster cross-sectoral collaborations. Think about it as an example. In a DMO, tourism destination organization, we might have the need to work with data and have another person to really be this data analyst for that organization. But those skills might not currently be available in-house. So it's about creating strategic alliances, networks, also with other sectors where there might be data scientists available that for tourism are able to offer those competences that we need. So collaboration is no longer just a buzzword that is nice to have, but it's really at the core nowadays on how to make it happen. And if we look at this Gartner's hype cycle, this famous model that shows every year what technologies are coming up, and we are seeing in the innovation trigger phase things like generative AI, multi-experiences, digital humans. We see cloud services, of course, augmented design, quantum things that are coming around where we say, how can we integrate that sooner or later also in tourism? So the topics are not becoming less complex, they're not becoming slower, but in fact, they're increasing in speed, in dynamics, and also this puts some additional pressure, but also opportunity on tourism as a work force to really be ready and get ready to manage those skills, not only when they are already needed, but advance vision recognition is really important to build the skills before they are really required mainstream. Every part of the offline world will have a digital layer. And this is a key statement, I think, that I've heard at a conference last year that is really essential. Because if we think about some tourism jobs might not be in the foreground very digitally heavy or active, there is always a digital operational system connected, and everything in the operations, in the customer journeys becomes digital. And that essentially also redefines the role and the work and the skills that employees in tourism need to be ready for this reality. And we can, in an organization, say 3 people are responsible for the digital things, just to give a number, but we really need to think that every employee needs to have at least a certain level of digital capacity, of ability to deal with the tools that are available. I also mentioned before the factor human transformation. We talked, for example, in the tourism transition pathway very much also about resilience. And I really think that nowadays we're in this age and era of humanistic philosophies, of values. And what we're now exploring is, first of all, to figure out better how to create an intersection between the human possibilities and technological possibilities, also in forms of new collaboration. So we not only need to think about how can we as humans develop more digital skills, let's say to operate social media, to analyze data, or to maintain a good website, but also as we see the increase of automation of robotics, also especially in hospitality, or other areas, we will also need to think about new forms of collaboration, of co-creation among robotic and human teams. And that also puts us into new forms of work, and also potentially new business models that we need to figure out. In addition to that, we are tapping slowly into this sense that the focus is really again about having a well-being work experience, and also thinking that employees are not just employees, but they're humans that have a personal life. And I think with the pandemic and Zoom calls endlessly over the last 1.5 years, where suddenly everyone has a look into another person's living room and sees the pets and the kids and every thing in between, it helped us to develop a human perspective, and it created empathy. It created really an understanding that nowadays it can be in the foreground, that people have a life going on and must not be something that is hidden away somewhere. So what is in science currently happening, and where is also the research going that I'm happy to share with you? Essentially what we are talking about, and this is also very relevant for tourism ecosystems, is that we have blending, a merging, and an integration. So we might have the tourism workplace, which is somewhere in a person's life, takes 8 hours a day or more or less. Then we have also the person's leisure and life domain. And we have the digital technologies that again help us to blend on an everyday life basis. So whereas before those areas were completely separate, it's now about thinking how they come together, and how also the work life can contribute to positive personal life, and how a positive personal life can also make the workplace experience better. And with this, I think one of the core things is again about finding the values that allows us to have those integrated systems. So nowadays we have already, when we think about action, spoken about innovation culture, about creating knowledge infrastructures, innovation hubs that link different sectors, different stakeholder groups together, and also do that across multiple sectors. So this will be a core part where we create the linkages that are necessary to have the skills that we need. When we talk about tourism, upskilling and reskilling, I believe also that one conversation around that should be about the employee experience first. Why employees' experiences? Well, because nowadays we have multiple stakeholders to deal with, and that has always been the case. But I think never before was there such an awareness about the role of the employees in the whole customer journeys, in the whole operations, in the making tourism a good workplace. Because if the employees are also well, living well in the workplace, then this has a ripple effect on the customer journey as well. And we're just now starting to think and research more intentionally about how to not only recognize the importance of an employee experience, but in fact designing for better employee experiences that they have the skills necessary to then create better customer experience as well. So one of those things we need to really now also start thinking about is this holistic long-term journey. I call it the employee experience or lifelong journeys. And that really relates to skills. How? Well, first, we need to think about how can we attract qualified employees? What are the skill sets that we require from tourism employees? And also, what can the workplace offer at the same time? What does every individual tourism provider offer for the employee to improve, to get new skills? And long term, it's also about engaging employees with not only their skills, but seeing them as people with a personal growth, fulfillment, motivation that they want to grow as well, and giving them the space and the time in a tourism place where they can say, I can feel fulfilled, I feel valued, and I can grow. Why is this important? Well, because it leads us long-term to retention, to loyalty, and this is really connected to the opportunities that we nowadays need to offer for our training, skilling, and upskilling. Maybe before it was more of a peripheral topic, but also with the change of the generations, the demands that people have nowadays towards their employers, thinking also about what we call the great resignation, that people are just resigning from work in numbers that have never been seen. It's really the time to think about how the work experience itself can be very beneficial mutually for the employee and also the employer. So finally, I also want to just highlight a stakeholder co-creation process that has been done of the tourism transition pathway. And I feel this is also representing the day and age and the time that policies, the targets, that actions are no longer, let's say, created in silos, but really are a representation of an effort to connect stakeholders, to listen to stakeholders, the different voices, opinions, and really create some positive impact together. And this screenshot is just an example where in the last couple of months we have been working on a mural as a digital platform to tap into what needs to happen for the tourism transition in general, but especially for digital empowerment of tourism providers, employees, and consumers alike. What are some of the main topics towards this 2030 that we need the skills for? So first of all, tourism data, standards, spaces, infrastructures, they are being currently put into place with concrete targets and actions. So relating to that, it will be more about having the people in the different levels of an organization that know how to deal with data, that know how to implement, share the data in commonly shared data spaces, and also conduct the analysis that is needed to use the data for real-time management in everyday business life. We also see that tourism experiences happen in a digital market that also requires different skills levels. So we talk really about creating a digitalized tourism before, during, after travel, creating that not only with historic data, but essentially with real-time data. So it's really important to also think about that. Another topic that is currently coming up is the virtual tourism experiences, to have a virtual twin equivalent that users, consumers could visit And again, this requires a whole setup of virtual realities for tourism. Smart tourism destinations, again, that require a lot of stakeholder integration are continuing. And at the same time, we see more sharing economy platforms, new business models also emerging in that space that will also create more resilient, more fair and co-creative practices in tourism businesses that ideally create value for the tourism providers, the locals, and also the tourists that come to visit. And with that, the digital competences is not only an add-on, but it's really the starting point. It's the main thing that we need at the first phase, because all those ideas, all those issues can only be achieved effectively if those digital competences are in place. So where are we going next? What could also be possible issues and initiatives to be discussed that we create digitally empowered humans to reach holistic tourism ecosystems? Well, first, we need to talk about different levels of digital intensity, of digital qualification. There is not just one digital qualification, but multiple levels, and think what are the necessary skills for different stakeholder groups or businesses. We need to make sure that companies, SMEs especially, can participate in a digital value chain. So that could be as easy as having an online presence with a website, or being on a platform that connects local providers, micro businesses with some online presence where they can be found and booked and so forth. We also need to think that digital empowerment is not just for, let's say, the business side, but also the tourists themselves, again, humans, need to be also empowered and able to interact then, let's say, with an AI solution, with a virtual space. So it's always about the holistic empowerment of everyone involved and not just one part of that. Lifelong learning has been mentioned today a lot of times. So just to re-emphasize that also again, especially in the digital space, lifelong learning means also being advanced with skills and being dynamically able to update training skills as new knowledge needs arise. And this is really critical when it comes to all the new technologies that are emerging. Collaboration is a key topic. Create destination or other stakeholder innovation hubs. Create the infrastructure that allows for an accessible, easy, and fair sharing of knowledge, where stakeholders can mutually support each other. And also create training and identify the training needs that might be for some specific businesses more of getting people into adopting the basic skills. And for other organizations, this might be to have advanced skills. So sometimes it might be as easy as, let's do a training on how to maintain a website or social media or create a VR video. And other times it might be our organization needs a data analyst be trained in-house to perform all the different analysis. Generally speaking, peer-to-peer learning practices, experiences is especially helpful when we talk about very innovative skills that are needed, where there's very little evidence yet, or maybe only outside tourism, that we can learn also from other practitioners what is already out there, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just it's more about connecting with the right frameworks. And finally, tourism quality of work and employee experience is not just digitally supported, but really a core focus that we should keep in mind. And this accessibility for everyone to offer this lifelong upskilling and reskilling and learning in general, because this will be needed in the future. It will be requested by employees in the future, but overall it will make for a better overall ecosystem. So just to end on that note with a few ideas, and yeah, thank you very much for your attention, for listening, and I look forward to participating in our panel discussion in a moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barbara, for your keynote speech. Really interesting and rich in insights and ideas to be taken up in the roundtable that we are about to begin. Before starting, let me briefly introduce the other guests of today's roundtable, who are Elfa Kere, Kerstin Auer, and Klaus Ehrlich. You can see them here. Elfa Kere works at the European Commission as Policy Officer for Tourism in Directorate General for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship, and Small and Medium Enterprises. Kerstin Auer is the Tourism Sector Secretary at the European Federation of Trade Unions in the food, agriculture, and tourism sectors, and she is also coordinator of the European Trade Union Liaison Committee on Tourism. And finally, Klaus Ehrlich is the General Secretary of Rural Tour, which is the European Federation of Rural Tourism, and he is also the leader of Work Package 8 of the Ntg project, dedicated to the exploitation of results. Okay, today we will address two specific topics. The first one is how to build and manage a broad, inclusive, engaging, and effective partnership for the tourism industry. I will make a very brief introduction of the topic, recognizing that the digital economy of today and tomorrow must have people at its heart, and recalling that with the European Green Deal, the European Union has marked its ambition to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050, adequate organizational efforts and financial resources must be committed to identify skill needs and support the development of relevant skills. Indeed, improving the skills that will be required in the coming years by the labor market is crucial for both people and companies to unlock opportunities for more and better jobs while supporting growth and competitiveness. The real problem is to understand how to translate these fair and shareable intentions into concrete actions capable of producing tangible results by trying to profitably bring together public and private actors, institutions and businesses, workers and students, universities and training providers. Well, the first participant in the roundtable we are honored to host today is Elfa Kere, the DG Grow officer who is following most closely the implementation of the Pact for Skills in the tourism sector. Elfa, how difficult is to activate and implement the Pact for Skills in an industrial ecosystem as fragmented and marked by the prevalence of small and micro enterprises as the tourism one?
Thank you very much, Rino. First of all, thank you to NTG Alliance for inviting me today to participate in this event. It really is an honor for me to be here at such an important event on skills. And thank you, Rino, also for this important question in relation to the Commission's Pact for Skills initiative. As you know, and as you well covered in your introduction, this action was indeed launched a year ago with the aim to set up large-scale skills partnerships in each of the 14 ecosystems identified in the updated EU's industrial strategy, one of which, of course, is the tourism sector. So your presentation and Barbara's, in fact, gave a very good overview of the Pact for Skills, so that allows me to speak more concisely to your question. I do believe it is a challenge to activate and perhaps equally to implement the Pact for Skills initiatives in the tourism sector, which we all know is highly fragmented and is composed more than 98% SMEs and micro SMEs. But I would like to point out that it's not only the tourism sector that is highly fragmented, and actually the automotive sector, which you mentioned, is quite heterogeneous. It has large and small SMEs and is composed of various subsectors, and they have managed to set up their skills partnership last year under the Pact for Skills. Similarly, the textiles ecosystem is very fragmented as well and is currently on track with the tourism sector to launch their skills partnership by the end of this year. And both of these sectors have a blueprint skills project, which is helping them on many levels. And of course, the tourism ecosystem also benefits from an ongoing blueprint project for the sectoral cooperation to address skills needs led by NTG, which will really serve, I think, as a good basis to bring together industry, national and regional authorities, and educational and training providers in a large-scale skills partnership and apply the knowledge and data that they've obtained throughout the course of the project. Also, I want to note that there are a number of experienced associations operating at EU level that bring together members from various tourism subsectors like accommodation, food and beverage, travel agencies, DMOs, etc., that can act really as an information source for their members at national and local levels, since these associations are participating directly in the ongoing setup of the Pact for Skills. We have social partners also fully engaged in the process, such as EFET, who are, I'm happy to say, are here next to me on the panel. We feel that it's important for a wide variety of stakeholders to really come together and, in a first step, agree to the general principles of the Pact for Skills Charter, as well as some overall ambitious yet realistic commitments, which then can be implemented on the ground via skills partnerships, bringing together all of these stakeholders. Now, it's important to highlight and emphasize that we're working in a voluntary environment, and although the commitments should be really ambitious, they can also then be tailored to the needs and capabilities of the skills partnerships at local level in a next step. Europe, as we know, is very committed to upskilling and reskilling the tourism workforce, not only in the tourism sector, but all industrial sectors. Just to recall that the Porto Summit in May, the commitments included the ambition of having an employment rate of at least 78% in the EU by 2030 and having at least 60% of adults attending training courses every year, which is quite ambitious. But we are confident that the Pact for Skills partnerships will indeed contribute to achieving these goals. Thanks for the floor, Rino.
Thank you to you, Elfa, and we are very, very happy every time to support your initiatives because you are so keen, so involving, and it's a very important work. What are you doing in this moment? Thank you so much. And now the second roundtable participant is Klaus Henrik, the General Secretary of the European Federation of Rural Tourism. Klaus, how the launch of a large-scale European multi-stakeholder partnership can benefit from the experience of the ongoing blueprints for sectoral cooperation on skills?
Hello, good afternoon. Thanks to Rino, to Locke, to all the organizing team to set up this final panel. Right away down to your question. Well, our current project, Next Tourism Generation Blueprint, is kind of a test laboratory for all the processes, service structures, etc., that will have to be used or implemented in the skills partnerships. We are the guinea pigs for the rest of Europe in a certain way, and we currently implement the concept already through this, as we call it, national regional skills groups. This is from the concept and from the idea exactly the same as the skills partnerships from the Pact for Skills idea. This is done in the partner countries at the moment, which means we make the experience quite interesting one. If I remember the first draft that was discussed about a year ago to where we stand now after a recent meeting 2 days ago, I just can confirm famous saying, the way to hell is paved with good intentions. Things are a lot more complicated than you think at the beginning. And in a certain way, with the current project, we make all the good and bad experiences that others would make if it wasn't for us. Anyway, there's one clear concept, and I would like to stress this also in view of the very diverse structure of the tourism industry on both sides, both industry and trade unions, workforce. Everybody needs to be on board. We have a training system or a lifelong education system which systematically leaves out certain very important and increasingly important groups of the tourism value chain that have no access to it. And we need really to work on this. I'm specifically thinking about the self-employed. I'm thinking about the small and micro, and I call it nano services, 1 or 2 employees. They are currently have faced big differences, and they need to be in our concept of collaborative framework. They are a must to be included. Now, anyway, on this side, we are happy to share the practical experience we already have in this field to setting up these skills partnerships in any other region or country in Europe that may be interested already right now, even if the Pact for Skills in Tourism formally is not launched. But as Elfa know, we are working very closely on this, and hopefully next week, Thursday, we will have a good step forward in finding basic agreements. Also, for anybody interested, the blueprint project Next Tourism Generation, as so far available, already has a wide range of results that can be used by interested stakeholders right away at this moment. Some are in beta, some are not fully finished, but they are very useful already. We have a skills matrix. This is complicated to explain, but just to give you a rough idea, it allows to match the skills needs for a job with the skills available at an employee or a job seeker. It defines where the gaps are, and it offers practical solutions to how to improve this skills gap, where to obtain training, and where to find an adequate job from both sides, both employee and enterprise. Then there is a full toolkit already that is useful for businesses, education and training systems, and individuals regarding job profiles, training modules, research. I'll come to that part in the next question, I think, about the skills intelligence, and a knowledge page on research and resources. So this is already available at the website, and if it's not published, I think we can provide this to everybody who is listening or interested. Now, I would like to also make a specific comment on the practical problems we face when implementing the skills partnerships. And this is that in a fragmented industry with mostly, in most European countries, small, medium, and very small nano-size enterprises, it obligatorily requires that the governments, that the administrations are on board. That's not necessarily the closest one, which is the tourism ministry, because they don't manage the funds, they don't manage the policies, the overall policies for education and on-the-job training. Here we found, in cooperation with the colleagues of Nextour, who are not able to join today, but I had a talk with them yesterday, that we think the regional DMOs, the destination management organizations, have a very strong role to play, because they already live and they understand, which is very important, they understand both worlds. They understand how the administration operates, and they also understand how the private sector works. And they already connect in their activities with a lot wider range of public administration than just the tourism administration, especially those that are relevant for infrastructure, that are relevant for training, that are relevant for education. So we definitely need to give a strong voice in the skills partnerships to the DMOs, because they can be very instrumental and useful. Just to close, the important thing, and this was said, I think I watched part of the previous sessions as well, I can just underline, we need to break the silos. Everybody's living in his bubble and usually not looking outside it. This doesn't work in the future. We need to break this up, and we need to think across sectors and work with other sectors that maybe not are directly the tourism services, but strongly impact and condition whatever is happening on the ground with our visitors and with our industry. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Klaus. A lot of insights also in your intervention, and we will come back on these ideas in the second part of the roundtable. The third guest on our panel is Kerstin Awald, Political Secretary Tourism Sector of EFAT. Thank you for joining us today, Kerstin. I would like to ask you, what are, in your opinion, the best possible solution to upgrade the current level of cooperation between the business world and the education and training system in terms of identifying tomorrow's skills and timely setting up appropriate learning programs.
Thank you very much, Rino, and thank you very much for inviting EFAT to this meeting. I mean, as you can imagine, vocational education and training is important for the workers in the sector because it often decides about their entry into the labor market, it decides about their position, about their working conditions, salaries, and also about their work, their career perspectives in the sector. I must say, the question as it asks is already a bit difficult for me because you speak about cooperation between business world and education and training systems. So for me, one very important actor, stakeholder is missing there, and these are the workers and the trade unions. So, and I mean, we all know that in most countries, and this is what I always say again and again, the workers and the trade unions are involved in vocational education and training. At national level, there are joint training funds, joint training institutions on VET in France, in Belgium, and the Netherlands. And in many countries where we have apprenticeship schemes, I mean, there the trade unions, the social partners are involved in development of curricula in Germany, Austria. So I think we should never forget this. And also at company level, I think that the workers and the employers jointly have to play an important role. Huh? So we think that it's best if it comes about to training at company level. I think it's best if both are involved in identifying training needs, in planning trainings, in implementing any training plans, but then also in evaluating. So. And we think that the same goes also for the very important new issues like digital and green, so the dual transitions. Also here we think that the businesses, the employers, the trade unions, and the workers are best placed to deal with this and to anticipate any challenges which are posed by those new technologies, by requests with regard to sustainability, and to really assess the impact and to decide jointly to what to do in order to have a fair and a just transition and to leave nobody, no one behind. I must say I liked it very much, the presentation of Barbara Neuhofer, when she talked about this new work 2030. I think this is really a dream. I mean, everybody would love to work less, 3 hours a day would be great. But I mean, what we see actually, particularly in hospitality, is that those who are still working, they are working, that the workload has increased incredibly because the sector is suffering from a huge staff shortage. And I mean, what you described there, Barbara, a bit, that the workers can be empowered to decide about their working time, about collaborators and so on. So I don't think that this is realistic in the hospitality sector, where it's customer orientated. So I think you cannot, I mean, all the core areas in the hospitality, be it the cleaning of hotel rooms, the checking in out of guests, the cooking and serving of meals and drinks, the maintenance, meetings and events, wellness, I think those all have to be provided on site, so they cannot be provided offline or remotely. So what we unfortunately see that often when new technologies and digitalization comes in, that it's rather having a negative impact, cutting jobs and de-skilling rather. And I think our joint aim should be really to use those new technologies, digitalization, to ease the workload and to improve the quality of the job, to have a better quality of services. A quick word to ELFA, the Pact for Skills. We really appreciate all the initiatives of the European Commission to push for training, upskilling, and so on. I think we have to really make sure that all subsectors are involved. You said that they are all involved. But then also, if we talk about subsectors, I think we should also make sure that all the social partners involved. I think this could be improved because for the moment I only see, apart from EFAT, not any other tourism subsector trade units involved there. As you know, Elfa and Klaus, the social partners in hospitality still have many open questions with regard to this Pact for Skills on tourism, and we are really happy that we can address this next Monday in our sectoral social dialogue, where Elfa and Klaus will attend and explain a bit more to all our members, because I mean I think we need, you're very ambitious saying that we might be able to sign this pact before the end of the year. I think we as representative European associations, we need a bit longer process also to consult with our members, because they are the ones who then afterwards have to implement this at national level. So but we are really pleased to have this opportunity to talk about this with you on Monday, and then see where we can get together. I leave it with this as a first reaction. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kerstin. Thank you for your interesting thoughts about the current level of cooperation between the business world and the education training system. We have focused on this type of cooperation, but obviously the reskilling and upskilling activities of the training system are for the benefit of workers, the workers of today and workers of tomorrow. So we didn't obviously forget the word of work. Anyway, Barbara, now it's your turn. In the last few weeks, you coordinated on behalf of the European Commission an interesting workshop, cycle of workshop on the transition pathway for tourism, which was attended by many stakeholders in the sector. Well, based on your experience, is it possible for you to deploy really effective and efficient planning activities by applying the bottom-up method rather than the top-down method?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rino. The tourism transition pathway has been the first of its kind. So it has been really an experiment in a way, but really a proactive way in which to adopt this philosophy of co-creation. And as my colleagues also here on the panel said, this thinking in silos that I mentioned before is no longer working. It brings us to the limits of our possibilities if we just cook our own soup, so to speak. So we need to consult different stakeholders, and in this consultation process that was started over the summer and is still continuing, over 180 stakeholders were only involved in the workshops. And although it was digital, although it was facilitated with many different levels, the outcomes were really great because they had the voices of different stakeholder groups represented and included. And I believe there is no way around to make decisions that are far-reaching for the next 10 years without going through a very in-depth, comprehensive stakeholder consultation process that hears what the different levels have to say. Because ultimately, they are the ones who need to commit to the actions, to the targets, and the milestones that are identified. They're the ones to have to carry that out. And in that way, it needs to be approved, it needs to be validated, and it needs to be some kind of a consensus that is reasonable, it's feasible, and can be achieved. It's definitely ambitious, and a lot of those goals that have been identified are on purpose ambitious, but I believe this consultation is really key to then carry out the commitments also on all the levels effectively by the people who were involved.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, now we can move on the second specific topic of the roundtable, which is how to best monitor skills demand and supply and anticipate skills needs in the tourism sector. A brief introduction also here. In a capital saving and labor intensive sector such as tourism, which differs significantly from the increasingly labor saving and capital intensive manufacturing industry, the human capital is one of the main assets for tourism companies. However, the workforce operating in this sector, so remarkable for the gross domestic product and the employment levels of the European Union, but at the same time highly subject to rapid technological changes and continuous transformations in the business models, This workforce needs to be continuously updated and retrained according to the principles of lifelong learning. From this point of view, it's necessary to have tools and mechanisms for monitoring and anticipating the skills needs in order to support the digital and green transition, taking into account the fast changes on the labor market, as well as the consequences of technological and demographic evolution, providing relevant and timely information on the skills needs in the coming years. Klaus, the second question is for you. During a recent meeting on Pact for Skills organized by the European Commission, you have talked about the need of a skills intelligence activity. Could you explain this concept in detail?
Thank you, Rino. Yes, happy. I will start with the date that was already given by Barbara and by other speakers during the day. The percentage varies, but let's say roughly 60, 70, 80% of jobs that will exist in 2030 are not even yet invented at this moment. This is a clear message. We have 9 years with a very disruptive change where we need to be quick and fast in order to update. Because any new entry in the market or any new entry in the tourism activity will start from the beginning in compliance with this, while the existing workforce is at a higher risk to be left behind compared with new entries. On the other hand, as Rino just said, tourism is, and by nature will remain a manual, I call it life is a manual sector of economy. Just by the simple reason that its success depends on making visitors happy, and this happens usually through experience transmitted by another human being, or at least facilitated by this human being creating the conditions for this experience to happen in the visitor. So this personal interaction will remain, but it needs to be efficient and it needs to get more digital. Also, we had the digital layer that Barbara commented to, and to really look very closely into what are the needs of the customers and which of these needs are critical to be still done by persons, or where can it be digitalized. I will give you an example. QR codes exists for 10 years, even more. Nobody ever thought about, had the brilliant idea to put menus in restaurants or bars on the QR code and everybody scans it. If it wasn't for COVID and suddenly we don't have the paper menus anymore, we have a QR code, everybody scans, has a look. This is a jump forward where the person that prints, that designs the menus has a different job, a digital job. He needs to be able to do this, but on a digital platform, not on his PC. And the next step probably will be that for taking the order, you also do this with your application, or a robot takes your order. Sorry, Kerstin, for that. But this is coming, and there are interesting robots even mixing 50 different drinks in a machine, looking with a nice interface. I just saw the BBC the other day. But still, these places, these restaurants, these bars will require somebody with a higher qualification who can give advice to the customer where he really needs it. But many things of the pure mechanic task of taking an order and bringing the glass of beer or wine, they can be mechanized and they will be mechanized. We like this or not. But maybe this is not, looking at the labor shortage at the moment, maybe somebody would even love to have this sooner than later, because it is really an issue. What do I want to say with this? We need to hear the grass grow, and we need to hear the grass grow very closely. We need a constant online observation of demand between industry, from let's say, industry as an employer and the supply of workforce that is available. And this is what is skills intelligence about. This has to be quick. We cannot wait 2 or 3 years until a problem comes up really hard. We need to find out almost real time. By crossing data from job centers, by crossing data from private job search or other platforms. We do something, a basic solution also for this in the Ntg Skills Lab by matching these two profiles I commented before. So this is one way, because the formal concepts changing university or vocational education curricula are far too slow. Between you sit down, you define a new curricula, you have it publicly approved, you implement it, and you have the students out of university, out of vocational education, you have 4 or 5 years. And remember, we have 9 years left. So this is, of course, not forgotten, but it's not the short term and not the quick solution. We need, of course, the vision also to be implemented as soon as possible in the formal education, but we need quick response mechanisms that allow to implement these changes we detect in the next year or even in half year, if possible, in new re- and upskilling activities. Now, this may now sound that I'm against long-term or I'm speaking out long-term. No, we need long-term. But long-term, I think, will be increasingly generalistic. I'm not very much convinced of the high specification, high specialization that you have now in the formal education system, because we are producing people that are very good, even maybe with practice in one field, but they don't have the full understanding of more generalistic education or university career or vocational training. So maybe on this one, we should look also to introduce in the long-term education the results from the skills intelligence, make this quicker, make this faster, and promote more a general understanding of concepts and cross-sector contexts than a specific specialized training, at least in the higher education. That's my view. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Klaus. I agree with you. It's definitely needed, these organized and structured skills intelligence systems for just to monitor in the best way and to respond reactively very, very fastly to the changes and the needs of the labor market. The second question is for Elfa. Elfa, in order to mobilize all stakeholders to take concrete actions to upskill and reskill the workforce operating in tourism sector, it's crucial to support essential initiatives with adequate financial resources. What funds can be drawn on to achieve the objectives of the Pact for Skills?
Thank you, Rino, for this golden question. First of all, I want to say that I fully agree that these upskilling and reskilling projects and initiatives under Pact for Skills must be supported with sufficient financial resources, in particular for the tourism sector. This is clear. I do have to highlight from the outset, however, that there is no direct financing from the Commission for the Pact for Skills, but there are a number of different ways of financing the Pact and the actions to be undertaken within the skills partnership. So first of all, I want to mention, of course, the big bullet, the new European Social Fund, the ESF Plus, which is really the EU's key financial instrument for investing in people. This has a budget of over 99 billion for the next MFF, the period 2021 to 2027. And the ESF Plus will continue to contribute to the EU's employment, social, education, and skills policies, including structural reforms in these areas, also in implementing the European Pillar of Social Rights, supporting jobs and skills, and creating a fair and socially inclusive society. And one of the priorities of the ESF Plus, in fact, is reskilling and upskilling people for the transition to a green and digital economy. So the large majority of this funding under ESF Plus, as you may know, is under shared management with member states. So this means that the managing authorities in each country will allocate the money to projects that are carried out by a range of public and private organizations, clearly responding then to the needs of the region or of the country. And this is also why it is critical that, and Klaus mentioned this as well, that we raise awareness as much as possible of the Pact for Skills to national and regional authorities so that these initiatives can be more easily funded under this umbrella. So we are already doing so. We've spread the word as much as possible through the Committee of Regions, through the Council Working Party, and through the Tourism Advisory Committee, which is composed of member states. So the program funds at regional and national level can also then be leveraged to finance Pact for Skills initiatives. Finally, and this might be a smaller portion, but from next year, the Commission will offer support services to signatories of the skills partnerships. This would be in the form of a knowledge, network, and guidance hub. This will enable signatories to the Pact for Skills to find partners, project partners, and identify funding for these projects under the Pact for Skills and connect with other local stakeholders. So this is something new that can hopefully also be leveraged for these initiatives. There are other funding possibilities, which includes the annual call for the Erasmus Plus program, which covers the blueprint projects and their follow-up. And then the Pact for Skills website under DG Employment, under the Commission, also links to a number of webinars that can be accessed by the public that provide detailed information, in fact, on the funding possibilities. So I encourage you to check that out, as well as the EU's online guide to funding for the tourism sector. This is currently under, it's being updated, but by the end of the year, it will have all up-to-date information on the possibilities. So I do want to say that private investment might also be required for some of these initiatives, but there do exist numerous possibilities to obtain funding really at unprecedented levels through both the EU and national funds for upskilling and reskilling. So finally, I'm very glad that Barbara mentioned the work on the tourism transition pathway, because this is work that the Commission is doing towards establishing a European agenda for tourism, 2030-2050. And this would implicate, of course, a multi-annual program. So I hope that by next year, early next year, we should see some more developments on this. So thank you for the question.
Thank you to you. Now we feel reassured that the financial resources are not lacking for the implementation of the Pact for Skills. Thank you, Elfa. And I have a second question for Barbara. Barbara, the need for constant monitoring and forecasting the skills needed in the tourism sector intersects with that of verifying the effectiveness of the actions put in place. In the context of the tourism sector, what could be the most useful key performance indicators to be adopted to measure the capacity of the Pact for Skills to achieve its goals?
It's an interesting question, Rino. I can only speak so far also for the tourism transition pathway. I believe the goal here is also to, first of all, identify the concrete targets for 2022, 2025, 2030, and 2050. And those need to be tied to concrete, achievable, smart action points that can be also carried out by all the different stakeholder levels. Having said that, we need, and I agree here with Klaus, we need not only to monitor, but we really need to go more into the real-time understanding of what comes next, anticipating that really, and not just monitoring what has happened. So one activity could be taking the stock of where are the status quo skills, have they been achieved, and do regular exercises to keep monitoring that every 6 months, every year, for example, to see has it been achieved or what else needs to be done in order to reach those specific milestones. But generally speaking, times have very dynamically evolved, and this real-time understanding, I think, is key. And for that, probably we need to look more also into how data can help us and how we can use some more accessible and easy to use platforms for the business level as well, to then monitor what are the skills that their employees have currently and need in the future.
Okay, thank you. And Kerstin, you have the honor to be the last to speak in the roundtable. And my question for you is this: the issue of the effectiveness of training programs is complex and obviously depends on the collaboration of several actors. But in order to plan a continuous and fruitful upskilling of workers, I think it's crucial to avoid leakages of human capital to other sectors. In this sense, what policies can help to change the current image of tourism jobs, especially those related to low-end qualifications?
Yeah, thank you very much, Rino. Let me start with saying that I think we are all aware that the hospitality tourism sector has always been an entry sector into the labor market, especially for young people. Huh? So, and there they gain really, they acquire many competencies and skills. For instance, soft skills, social skills, which are also very demanded in other sectors. So, and this is often also, and we also know that many workers move on; they don't stay long in the sector. I mean, again, the question. I mean, I understand that you want me to react on the question: which policies need to be changed are needed to change the image of the sector. I think again, the question for us is not the image, is the conditions in the sector. Huh? So I mean, so I think if the conditions in the sector were good, the image would follow automatically. You know? So therefore, I think for us, it's very important that first of all, that the workers are really valued, that they are seen as an asset and not as only as a cost. So this is the first thing. And then we really think that what we need to pursue is that we have really decent working conditions in the sector, that there are people have wages they can live on, they have social protection, the working time allows them to combine work with private family life, that they are given proper training, which really leads to personal and professional development, that they have career perspectives. But also very important for us is that we need to make sure that the workers are given a say in all of this, so that they have workers' representation, that they can join trade unions, that there's social dialogue, that there is collective bargaining. So we think really that these are the crucial conditions really to improve the image of the sector, because only if the conditions are fine, then also the image would be, the sector would be able not only to recruit workers, but also to retain them. I mean, we are discussing this actually in the light of the actual labor shortage, also in the social dialogue HoReCa with Hottrack, and we would really like to see some sort of joint recommendation criteria how to really make the hospitality sector a more attractive and socially responsible sector for also for the workers. So let's hope that we can, because I think we have a joint interest there. Huh? So. Let me then probably also briefly react on a few issues the other colleagues said before. I mean, Barbara mentioned the transition pathways consultation. Great that there were 160 people in a huge number of workshops. I could attend one. I don't know how I ended up in the digitalization one, but it was an interesting experience. But I must say that the whole process was a bit opaque because I couldn't really figure out what were the other topics dealt with and who was participating in the others. So that would be great to have been a bit more transparency on this. On Klaus, you said you don't believe in long-term high-level qualifications, and you see the new jobs coming up with more digital things like. I mean, okay, we see now that it's more and more used that people order their menu, their food on laptop, on iPads, or robots are serving the food. But I mean, do we really want this? Do the customers, do the guests appreciate this? And how does a robot or an iPad will explain to you which wine matches your food? I mean, I think. This you can probably do in a very low level fast food setting, but I wouldn't see a 3-star restaurant asking people to choose their food or just on an iPad. I mean, but this is something to discuss. So I think I still believe in real vocational education and training, and I think the quality of tourism and hospitality services in Europe is really based on those really good vocational qualifications and the métiers. Yeah, I leave it with this. I mean, Elfa, we will have a discussion on Monday on this whole question of the funding. So we know that there will be some funding, but I mean, playing it back to the member states is not easy for in general. I mean, EU funding is not easy for social partners when it comes to very concrete activities like qualification and training. For instance, when this Erasmus Plus next tourism generation was started, I mean, it was really not possible for us as European social partners to get involved and to spend a lot of men and women power in such a project, although we think it's very important to have such projects. But I mean, okay, this discussion we will have at another place. Thank you.
Thank you to you, Christine. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to continue our discussion, but this is very, very I think this afternoon session was very inspiring for us, but also for our audience. We have listened to a series of reflection, analysis that I believe will be very useful. First of all, for the European Commission in the implementation of the Pact for Skills in the tourism sector, which is about to begin. For example, Klaus told us that the Ntg Blueprint is a test laboratory for the processes, services, structures, and content of skills partnership. He also told that even if tourism is the last mainly manual ecosystem in Europe, it's crucial to improve the skills of the human resources operating in this sector, not in an approximate way, but with an effective skills intelligence system. Elfa spoke about the ambitious and compelling challenge of implementing the Pact for Skills in our sector, but also in the other 13 main industrial ecosystems in Europe. Kerstin pointed out on the necessity to put the word on the center of the scene, at the center of the European policies. And Barbara highlighted the mindset change we need, underlying the importance of a co-creation, collaboration, but also of a human transformation, digital transformation, green transformation. In conclusion, I hope that our discussion was being useful and interesting for our audience as well. And so, thanking all of you, I officially close this 2021 edition of the Ntg conference. Ciao tutti, hello everyone, and thank you for accepting our invite. It has been a pleasure to stay with you.
Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you very much.